In my town, there is an old wives' tale of a boy who fell in love with a girl. He could never get up the nerve to ask her out. He'd follow her, waiting for an opportunity to approach her and ask her out. One day, he found out she was moving towns due to problems with her parents, and most likely never coming back. He decided he'd wait on the outskirts of town and surprise her. While he was waiting, his head filled with all the possibilities that this event could lead to. He began to get excited, keeping his wrists together and drumming his fingers together. He saw her car leaving town and heading down the only road out, which he was waiting beside, hiding in the bushes. As this was a rural road, there were large bushes on either side of the road and only one lane for cars to drive on. As the car drew nearer, the excitement overtook him and he leapt onto the center of the road, shocking the girl and not leaving enough braking distance for her to stop. The car swerved and hit the boy, launching him through the air and landing hard on the rough terrain of the rural road. The girl jumped from the car and approached his twitching body. As the girl bent down to examine his injuries, she heard a faint gasp from his body. He uttered a single sentence.
Love me.
He wheezed as blood trickled from his deathly grin. What? She replied in her confused state after presuming he'd died.
Do you love me?
He questioned in a sickly monotone voice. Yeah, sure, she answers after a moment's silence.
You're lying!
He yells, louder than he should have been able to considering his current state. The girl apologizes and begins to back away in fear of his screaming. A look of terror spread across her face. With great difficulty, he attempted to stand. He groaned, accompanied by the cracking of his bones. He fell to the ground and let out a cry of pain. The girl approached him again, in pity, lifting his arm over her shoulder and helping him get to his feet. She walked him to her car and laid him in the back seat as he lost consciousness. She climbed into the driver's seat and continued the way she was headed, as there was no hospital in town and she wasn't eager on spending the night with her parents. The drive to the next town was along a dark and lonely side road, nothing but empty fields on either side of it. She heard him shifting about in the back seat. She sped up, eager to get to the hospital, where she could drop him off and continue with the rest of her long journey. Are you alright? She asked, not even sure if he was awake, but eager to fill the silence with something. Keeping his eyes closed, he questioned her again.
Love me.
He muttered, as if the words pained him more than his wounds. She stayed silent, pretending not to hear him, and turned the radio on to fill the awkward void the question had created.
Why don't you tell me you love me?
He questioned, continuing his interrogation. She snuck a glance in the rearview mirror, and immediately wished she hadn't. The boy was now sitting up in the back seat, staring maniacally at the back of her head, an unsettling lifelessness in his eyes. You should lay down and rest, or your wounds could get worse, she suggested, hoping he'd stop his incessant glare burning deep into the back of her head.
Tell me you love me,
he demands, raising his voice slightly louder than before. Lie down. We'll be at the hospital soon. I think I see streetlights ahead, she replied, again avoiding his question.
Why won't you say you love me?
He screamed piercingly, causing the girl to jump in her seat. Stop it! She yells in response, trying to break through his screams of insanity.
Love me!
He screams one last time, wrapping his hands around her face. She yells out in agony as he claws at her upper face, gouging out her right eye. The car swerving on the road as he gripped around her neck. Her focus was torn from her driving, now being driven by her primal instinct to survive. The car swerved out of control and crashed into a telegraph pole. The following morning, the car was discovered by a local police officer, and the woman's body was examined by forensic experts who concluded that the woman didn't die from the crash, but from strangulation, as proven by the severe bruising around her neck, in the clear form of someone's hands. This is the part that confused the experts, as there was only one body discovered in the wreckage. Whoever else would have been in the car with her should have died from the crash itself. The boy hasn't been seen since that night. Some say he returned to the town and has fallen in love again.